Hey everyone, it's Time Spiral here. Apparently, we have a team playing right away, right as the next round was pushed. So we're actually just gonna give it a chance and see how they're doing. So we're in round three. We've got Zangi here against Requiem. We're gonna just check in real quick on the deck list here, so I can give you a little bit of a news. I believe Zangi is piloting a Merfolk deck. We just call it Fish. It is a Merfolk typal deck with tons of lords, some really cool cards here. And then Requiem is on a Esper control list. So, woof, going to be a tough matchup. Good luck to both players. Just going to resize my screen a little bit here so that we can perfectly see everything. Alrighty. Yeah, so typal against a deck with lots of wraths. We're going to see how that turns out. Requiem up here. Great starting hand. Lots of lands. We've got a End of Days. Ready for Anything. And a Cosmic Sinkhole. So Cosmic Sinkhole is our format's premium. Essentially our little force spike here that can also function as a counter for 3 or counter for 5. Ready for Anything is a fantastic draw spell. Scry 2, draw a card for 2 that then cashes it back out into an Investigate. And then End of Days, of course, lets you choose a non-land permanent type and then nuke all permanents that aren't of the chosen type. Fun gimmick. Since the introduction of battles, you are allowed to name battles, which means it is just 3 white for destroy all permanents. On the bottom here, we're keeping a 1-land hand. We've got an island here with Zangi. We have some good early 1-drops. We've got Rushwater Raider with Improve that lets itself add counters and can draw cards. And of course, we have Bone Tooth Darter, which can be cashed out to counter instants, planeswalkers, or sorceries. But we're not going to see that resolve. That Cosmic Sinkhole is going to eat that little fish here. We've also got a Sunken Ambitions, a Monument to the Fallen Man, which is kind of like a Aether Vial, except it's always at 2. We have a Spell Pierce, a Reloran Tide Caller here. Each Merfolk and Wizard you control has, whenever this creature attacks, a Bound, which lets you cast a spell that costs less than it from your hand. And then finally we have Thassa the Implacable Tide coming in one of our newest sets of the format, Theros Triumphant, as a retrain of the very well-known god from Theros, letting you tap or untap non-land permanents at the beginning of each combat. And then it creates Merfolk Looters, which is very fun. Swamp coming off here, off of Requiem, passing it back over here to Zangi. Drew a Seto-san, the Sacred Hand. Very big mono white walker here that creates warriors, gains life, and then can also destroy a bunch of creatures. So, very strong card. Monument to the Fallen Man coming out. Going to let Zangi play out the 2-mana Merfolk like Reloran Tidecaller and then hope that we pull into our other lords. The deck runs an absolute enormous amount of Merfolk lords. So as we draw into them, we'll be able to see them come in for essentially free. Of course, End of Days can always take that card off the board once we get to 5 mana. We drew into a Portal Fracture, which is a quench with a slight upside if you've got Wanderlust active. Wanderlust allows you to get a little bonus if you have 4 or more differently named lands, and well, we're going to have that going on from next turn. And if you do, you'll get 2 1/1 Golden Scout tokens. So Monument to the Fallen Man allowed us to put out that Tidecaller. We drew into a 3rd island. Zangi moving to combat is going to let the Tidecaller cast, I'm assuming, Rushwater Raider for free. Raider being a nice little 1/1 that if you improve, or if somehow manage to put other counters or equipment or auras on your own creatures, well, you'll be able to draw at least the card. In the second main phase, we're paying blue to improve the Raider up to a 2/2. By keeping all the lands up, we were skirting around that Portal Fracture here, so we're going to see that clue get cracked into a really powerful card. We have Dayang's Displeasure, which lets you either pick 2 or 4. The choice of 2 will either let you return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, force each player to sack a creature, force each player to sacrifice a non-creature, non-land permanent, And of course, the last one being the downside, where you conjure a Fatigue to the top of your deck, which is a colorless sorcery that costs 2 with draw a card. So essentially you are gunking your own deck. But sometimes for 3 mana, you want to absolutely deck your opponent. A Bound trigger, we're going to see a Flooded Depths get cracked here. Lovely little shot fetch is going to go pick up another land here. Hold up. I saw a wait, so we're going to see at start of combat, okay, which makes sense. Of course, some of the little intricacies of playing on Cockatrice is you have to be quick to communicate with your opponents. Sometimes rollbacks need to happen. So we're going to see Diang's Displeasure returning a non-land permanent, so we're going to see Bounce and Sacrifice. That's going to clear the Rushwater Raider, but we have a Spell Pierce here. So nothing to it. And still 2 lands open. Now, yeah. Casting the Rushwater Raider off of the Reloran Tidecaller is very important because this is on attack, and this is at the beginning of your end step, which means we're going to actually see 2 triggers here, which will draw 2 cards. So we're going to improve that second Raider up to a 2/2. And then at the end step, we are going to draw 2 cards, which is phenomenal because Monument to the Fallen Man will let us throw out those lords if we draw any, and we drew some. So we've got a Lantern Pearl Reader, probably the best lord that we have for Merfolk. It's a 2/2 that gives your other Merfolk +1/+1, and it enters the battlefield, you scry 2, and if you control another Merfolk, you get to draw a card. Agent of Deception being a fantastic counterspell piece. Essentially it's Spellstutter Fish. It's a 1/1 flash where counters creatures or planeswalker spells unless they pay X, where X is your devotion to blue, with all our lords being, all our lords being double pipped. We have a lot of devotion going on here, making for a very, very expensive counterspell to pay through. Issue is here, we're at 5, so we're going to see Seto-san. Oh, that's interesting. So Seto-san being a planeswalker means Agent of Deception is going to come out here and is going to say, nope, you can't have that planeswalker. Which is kind of sad because a End of Days here would have definitely cleared up the board. All right, so the reason to play Merfolk right now is Kalilia Scavenger. Absolutely powerful lord. Not only does it give your other Merfolk +1/+1 and has a ward 2 for 3, the really powerful ability is you get to look at the top 6 cards of your library and dump a Merfolk card with lesser mana value from among them onto the battlefield. Usually that'll be just another 2 mana lord. So that's going to be a really strong card there. While that's going on here, we're going to switch over here, just give it a quick look into our sideboards here. Zangi has, of course, extra Agents of Deception if they're worried about some creatures and planeswalkers. Tal Locust Sentry. We've got some Neutralizes, some Mirror Gates, Athasa. We could probably see some Neutralize coming in as a more expensive version of a Spell Pierce. Meanwhile, if we're looking over here at Requiems, we've got some things that dump on creatures, some Rift Splicings, Seal the Tomb, still Shanjin's Command. We've got options here on both sides. So both players are done. We're going to switch back over to our lovely little game here. Just going to switch the capture. There we go. Starting hands again. Zangi not keeping a land with just 1 land this time. Is going to go here. I'm assuming this one's going to be a keep. We have a lot of playable things. Keep 6. You definitely want to keep that Scavenger. We'll see what gets thrown back here. Requiem is playing a little quick. Should have waited just a little bit for that card to be thrown back. So meanwhile, we'll go look up at the hand. Cards that we've already seen are all there. The new one here is Shanjin's Command. Very powerful card. You really play this for that middle mode that lets you search for any card with mana value 1, exile it, and you may cast it without paying its mana cost. Lets you get a phenomenal toolbox of cards from creatures to removal to counterspells. And of course, the other modes, Sacrifice, Gaining Life, Exile the Graveyard, are a little more situational, but still plenty strong. Just playing out some untapped Flooded Depths to have the flexibility of casting what you need. Taking a bit of damage at the moment, but, you know, Nothing too scary. Zangi passing along, keeping up the Spell Pierce, keeping up Agent of Deception. We've drawn into our second Lord here with Pearl Reader. I'm going to play out an Alratha, Pearl of the Sandsea. Zangi's just going to flash in an Agent of Deception here at the end step, just to get a body on the board, which makes sense if you're trying to get an attacker off of either Pearl Reader or Scavenger. Given the fact that Zangi knows that the opponent's hand is probably filled with things like Cosmic Sinkhole, I would assume we're either going to see a Pearl Reader, because at least there you've got your Spell Pierce if you need it. It's a bit of a tricky one. Your opponent's hand is completely full. They've got lands open. Okay, so not upset with this. Tal Locust Sentry. Flying 2/1. I'm going to pick a non-creature, non-land card type when it enters the battlefield, and spells of that type will cost 1 more to cast. Both lands being cracked probably means that we're going to see a Cosmic Single here saying no. Really no other option. We've got a Sedate Tundra coming in and a Murmuring Falls. Both of them are pain lands, so we're taking another 2. I don't know why we're paying 2. Okay, we still need to pay the 1 here. Okay, just hold up. I just want to make sure. All right. Important that we keep track of that life total here. So Agent's just going to swing in for 1. There we go. So we had a nice little counterspell war here. So of course Pearl Reader hit with a Cosmic Sinkhole, Spell Pierce, Cosmic Sinkhole said no. So the interesting thing is, of course, the first Cosmic Sinkhole you could have simply paid the blue without paying for that, and you would still have a Spell Pierce in hand. So that's something to keep in mind. Pearl Reader coming in, says okay, trigger. Requiem's going to take a lot of damage from these lands, come to think of it. I mean, not from this one, but 2 life a turn is pretty big. So Pearl Reader comes in, scries 2. I'm going to draw another card. I'm going to draw another Scavenger. These cards are just so good. If they can land, we're not running out of fuel. Swinging for 2. Now we're going to see if... Okay, letting it through. We have the Displeasure in hand, which can do the same kind of trick about bouncing, sacrificing. We've got Unrelenting, of course. We're here at the end step, paying 2 life to make a clue off of Alratha, Pearl of the Sandsea. Alrighty, another Dayang's Displeasure. So we've got some removal. Not getting to the 4th and 5th lands for those Seto hands and End of Days, which means if these Scavengers start landing, we're gonna see some pretty scary stuff happening here. So I'm assuming it's gonna be a Displeasure. I assume we're gonna see once again the same modes: return a non-land permanent, and each player sacrifices a creature. It's always a hard choice to know what to put back. Pearl Reader back in hand is honestly not the worst, because, you know, Scavenger's going to hit, and then you can always recast the Pearl Reader. You're just not getting any attacks through. So Scavenger's going to land. We're going to have the trigger resolve. Look at the top 6 cards of our deck. We're going to see if we can find another Lord, I would assume. Could also find a... okay, Bone-Tooth Darter. That's a bit of a taxer. Sometimes you don't find anything bigger. So Pearl Reader comes back out. So Lords of Plenty. Bone-Tooth is getting +2/+2, and the individual ones are getting +1/+1. Pearl Reader is going to re-trigger. We're going to scry 2. We're going to draw another card. Gotta say, love the art on the Lantern Pearl Reader. It just looks phenomenal. Slight side effect of playing on Cockatrice. Of course, I can't see the cards that the players are scrying, but I can see what they are putting back. So Island went on the bottom, and we picked up Wave Racer as one of our other lords. That let us pay a little bit of mana whenever we cast instant sorceries or merfolk to get a 1/0 blue elemental creature tokens, which should be familiar if you played in Theros. Drawing an Inexorable Epidemic, which of course is a great spell against decks that are piling on the curses. This is an interesting cast. I'm assuming just Bone-Tooth Darter is just going to be cracked here to counter that. But of course the modes have to be picked first. So that's going to be the bounce and sacrifice. I'm assuming we're just going to sacrifice Bone-Tooth Darter to counter the displeasure here. Yeah, there we go. Really not much there to it, and that was a pretty quick 2-0 actually, all things considered. Matchup, yeah, could have been a Lord, but the Darter was very important there. So yeah, thanks again. That was a very quick Grand Prix Round 3 match. You can catch this one on YouTube after the fact. Just going to thank our players again. Thank you for... Alrighty, and you can catch these players and more in future Grand Prix rounds. So stay tuned for more. Thanks again for tuning in, and have a great one.